and welcome back to the channel. Before you is the business end of the new Runcam Split 4K hybrid camera, FPV camera and HD recording camera. And yeah, it's like the Cadex Tarsia. It has two cameras in one. So this is the FPV camera, this one here, and this is the 4K recording camera. So it's not groundbreaking in that respect. I think Cadex did it first, but it'll be interesting to see how well it performs. Things I've noticed so far, just only had it out of the box a few minutes, is this cable here is lovely. Unlike the flat flex cables that we've seen in the past for split type cameras, this is lovely and flexible, which is really, really nice because flat flex cables tend to be quite stiff and that can put a lot of stress on the points where they connect up to the circuit board and the camera itself. This was a problem with the early Runcam splits. That connection would become a little bit intermittent and that could cause issues, and had those issues myself with version 1 of the Runcam split. Since I fixed that up, I made some changes and it's been absolutely 100% reliable since then. So I'm hoping the same will be true of this without having to do any mods. Now on board we've got the typical big silver chip. This one doesn't have any numbers, but they haven't been ground off. They've been lasered off or something. I don't know. I don't know why there is so much concern about people knowing what chips are being used, because there's not that many of them and it's pretty easy to work out which ones are being used, but that's not important. Right, the circuit board itself, typical Runcam. It's a blue solder resist and it's just, you know, really well put together. I've got no complaints with the construction of this. And look how fine, look how small the parts are. These things are now getting so tiny in terms of components and the high density of components that you'd never have a hope in hell of fixing one of these if it broke. But on the other side, because the components are so small, they have very little mass, which means even in a really bad crash, they don't apply a lot of stress to the circuit board. So you're not likely to damage this in a crash. And speaking of size, it is a 20mm stack. It's got the holes for a 20mm stack, which in my case is a bit of a pain because all my quads have 30mm stacks. So I'm going to have to make up an adapter board to mount this in one of my quads. And even I was going to build a new quad, but I've still only got 30mm flight controllers. I don't have any 20mm flight controllers. So it just makes it so much harder sometimes when you're a reviewer, but not to worry. Things to notice on the thing itself, it's got micro SD cards, probably 64 or 128 gigs. I haven't looked at the book yet to tell. There is a manual out there, so it's pretty easy to follow. A couple of switches like the old Split where you got your, I think basically start, stop, record, power and other bits and pieces, I don't know. But I mean, this, you know, there's nothing groundbreaking here. This is all pretty average stuff. Obviously I'll be doing a pretty close comparison with the Hawkeye Firefly 4K Split that I just reviewed and the Tarsia that was in that little Cinewhoop that I just reviewed. So it'll be interesting to see how Runcam are competing with those two products. Now, it does have smart audio support, so your flight controller can change video modes, start and stop recording, that sort of thing. Yay! So there are pads on here to connect up your UARTs and so forth. There's also a pad for a separate little dongly joystick thing for setting up the camera. I'm actually quite surprised and a little disappointed that that little joystick connection, the little connector for that, isn't actually already soldered on there. Maybe it will be in production. This may be a pre-production. So because it's so nice if you can just plug in that joystick and set up your camera parameters, because a lot of people won't necessarily be using this in conjunction with a flight controller, or they're not using a compatible piece of software on their flight controller, so they won't have the smart audio control of the camera in the way that you know, Runcam have designed it. So it's nice to have it operate standalone, but it's a shame that you have to get your soldering iron out to make it work. Never mind. Who knows what will happen in production. So yeah, what can I say? I also wish, oh no, they do actually. Let's have a look at the other stuff that came with this one. And with it came a power lead. Ta-da! So we've got the complementary connector for that. We can just plug that in and notice red for positive, black for negative, yellow for video. So setting this up or connecting this up could be as simple as just wiring it across your flight pack and connecting the yellow wire to your video transmitter. Worth noting that according to the box, it'll operate from 5 volts to 20 volts. So that's up to 5S. If you want to run it on more than 5S, you will need to use some kind of voltage regulator, maybe off your flight controller, but this does draw almost 500 milliamps, something to be aware of. That's quite a bit of current. If you've got other stuff hanging off that same regulator that draws quite a bit of current as well, like servos, you may want to use a separate regulator for the Split. It's entirely up to you. You need to do some calculations to work that out. Also in the box we get some little screws, washers and things, and a little black thing for holding in the micro SD card, which is pretty essential. That was missing from the Tarsia, I noticed, in that little Cinewhoop. There was nothing to hold the micro SD card in, although given the small size of that craft, it's unlikely that it would ever encounter a shock big enough to dislodge the card. Right, so there we go. Now, if you want to see, I'll put a link in the description of this video to RCSchim's channel. He's done a latency test on this already. It works out, I think they claim 7 milliseconds, and he was getting less than that. So yeah, this having this separate FPV camera here, just, you know, so much better than having to work through an HD sensor, which is going to be slow and have more latency. This should completely eliminate latency. So if you want to use it on a quad, there's no compromise. There should be no compromise. You'll get really, really low latency video, and you'll get the recording video. And if you're a racer, well, hey, you don't have the burden of a heavy GoPro or whatever hanging off your quad. And if you're a freestyler, same thing happens. Your quad can be lighter, or you can use the weight you've saved for more battery, so you get longer flight times. So yeah, it's a win-win, isn't it? So I guess the real thing now is we have to put it on a plane and try it out. And it's blowing a gale. Why are these things sent to frustrate me? It's spring here, we live in the roaring 40s, we've got equinoxial gales, and I don't have a quad with a 20mm stack. Everything is conspiring against me, so I may just see if I can whack it onto the Outlaw250 and fly that in a gale. I've flown it in strong winds, but I don't know if it's going to be up to the weather we've got today. But I guess there's only one way to find out if I want to give you guys some sample footage. See what I can do. Jump cut. Okay, here we are. I've got the camera mounted on the Outlaw250. As you can see, she's a bit Heath Robinson. It's a bit make do, but I want to try and catch a gap in the weather. It's peeing down at the moment, blowing a gale. Can't fly it in the rain because it's not conformally coated. Now that the Hawkeye Firefly 4K split, that it was conformally coated, which is conformal coating just is a kind of a varnish, a lacquer that goes over the top of the circuit board so that it's insulated. The whole thing's insulated. If you get a drop of water on there, it doesn't matter because it's insulated from the electronics. With this, there's no conformal coating. So if you get water on here, it's going to upset things, going to ruin your day. So I won't be flying it in the rain, hopefully. And but it's going to get plenty of cooling up there, and the camera, she's just bolted in place. It's a slightly narrower fitting than a standard camera fitting. Previously on this Outlaw, I had the Fox Air, which is kind of a standard mini camera, and this mounting's a bit narrower. They haven't given me any spaces or anything to make it fit, so I've just used the bolts and I've just used a bit of tape to stop it from wobbling backwards and forwards. As I said, it is very, very make do. I've got a 500 milliwatt video transmitter on the side here, some really rough wiring over to here. So once the rain abates, if it abates, and once the winds drop, if they drop, we'll give it a throw and we'll see if it works. Okay, we've got on the bench. I'm going to plug it in. We'll see what we get coming out the spout. That should be tuned to the right frequency. Let's see what happens. The rain comes pouring down. Let's have a look. Oh, I've got a lens cap on. Oh, there we go. Well, there it is. I've got the lens cap on the HD. Is it recording? I think it is. Yes, it's actually automatically recording. So I'll take the lens cap off the HD camera, and if we're getting some good HD footage, I'll overlay it on here. Now, what do we see? The colors are pretty saturated, actually. Whoops, damn, banging the camera. The colors are pretty saturated on the monitor here. I noticed on Mario's RCSchim's one, they were quite saturated there too. And I can tell by the flickering that this is probably set to NTSC rather than PAL. But I see we have the little red flashing dot in the corner. That's excellent. We all love the little red flashing dot to tell us we're actually recording. And one of these buttons is a stop recording, and they're not very accessible as I've done this at the moment. So I'm just going to press a button, see if anything happens. Oh, I might have to move my rubber band. As I say, it's very high tech here, very high tech indeed. That didn't do anything. That didn't do anything. Oh, that stopped the recording. So we've stopped recording. Yay, that's good. Now, I assume it's, what does it say? Has it got the thing up here? It is HD preview. Doesn't tell me what actual resolution it is. I'm not going to spend too much time today because the weather is so bad. I want to get it out there, throw it in the air, see what the flight footage looks like, and I'll put some up after this. But this will obviously now have to be a two-part review because the weather is just, no, it's not cooperative. So I'm going to make sure that it works, and then I'll come back hopefully tomorrow with a much more in-depth review, showing you all the bits and pieces, but we'll give you a little bit of a sneak. Some aerial footage. I'll just go and sit patiently at the door and wait for the rain to stop. So if it does, here's your video. If it doesn't, thanks for watching. Bye for now. Welcome to the spring. Look at this weather. This is terrible, Muriel. Can't fly in this with a camera that hasn't got conformal coating, or wouldn't want to fly anyway. So I'm just sitting here waiting for this to hopefully abate, get a flight in. Look at it, it's terrible. And of course, don't forget, it's also very windy. The wind's actually dropped a little bit as the rain rolled in, but pretty sure the moment that rain slows down, the wind will pick up again. Could be an eventful flight if I get one. Well, there you go. That was rather challenging to say the least. Very, very strong winds out there. There was, as you saw, there was a window of sunshine, which I took advantage of. What can I say? I haven't reviewed the footage yet. I'll review that when I get back to the studio, back to the edit studio. But it looked very much as if the colours are very vibrant in the goggles, but it was a very, very nice, crisp, clear picture. Very, very nice to fly, and really I needed that ultra low latency today with the conditions that I was flying in. It was on 2.7K at 60 frames per second. I didn't change that. That was the default startup setting, so I just didn't want to lose that window, so I just threw it in the air at whatever it was set to, so we'll see how well that works out. I did kind of notice some funny stuff going on perhaps just with the FPV camera. It looked like it was some sort of vignetting, but in the middle. If I can see it, I'll point it out here on the screen, but it may have just been an artifact, I'm not sure. But as I say, when I review the footage at my leisure, hopefully we'll be able to tell what's going on. But yeah, overall, yeah, not too bad at all. Didn't get hot, but it was a pretty cold day today, I can tell you. I froze my little man parts off out there. So what I'll do now is I'll go and review this, put this part of the review up, and what I'd like you to do, if there's something particular you want to see me do with this camera, I will go through the various modes and things and how to set it up and configure and so forth. But if there's anything else you want to see, then do tell me, and I will try and get that in tomorrow's video when I can answer those questions and show you a bit more of this thing. Maybe I'll have time to get into a quad so we can see what it's like in a quad. But at least you've seen some live aerial flight footage from the new Runcam 4K Split Hybrid. Oh, the names on from Bob. Yes, there we go, call it Bob. But yeah, very impressed so far. But as I say, review the footage, and if there's anything unusual that I didn't notice yet, I'll put it right here. But if there was nothing, then spot you later. Bye for now. Thanks to my Patreon supporters.